We are expecting all 7 today.
Okay. Gonna call the meeting to order at 13:01 on Thursday, 8 May. There'll be a new roll call procedure today. We found out that all we need to do is get attendance from the commission members. We don't need to poll the staff. So I will do that. Tom Waddell, the commission chair, is here. Gail Jackson.
Here.
Robert Carpenter.
Does not look like he's on yet.
Okay. Robbie Hanovich.
Present.
Andrew Schaus. Dave Snyder.
Here.
Colby White.
Good afternoon.
Okay. I've got at least 5, so that's enough for a quorum. Okay. Open it up for public comment or participation. I don't see anyone here in the conference room. Is there anyone online that wants to speak?
Commissioner, we do have another, Andrew Schausch just joined us as well.
Okay. Great. Okay, it doesn't look like there's any public comment, any new announcements, changes to the agenda.
For announcements, we do have a change in membership.
Yeah, I've resigned from the commission, so this is my last month.
Oh, okay.
Dave Snyder.
Without me, was
No, it wasn't fine. Sorry about that.
Well, Commissioner Steiner, we appreciate your time with us and wish you well in your future ventures, but
Thank
thanks for joining us today and for all your service to the Airport Commission to date. So, yeah, thanks for
Thank
being
you,
here.
Brian. You bet.
We appreciate you being here, Dave. Okay. Okay, approval of the minutes. The staff recommendation was to approve the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
This is Commissioner Hanovich. I'll motion to approve the minutes.
A second?
This is Commissioner White. I second that motion.
Okay. All in favor of accepting the minutes and approving them, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and that moves it to you, Lori. Do you have any comments for us from the city council?
The one big thing that we're doing right now is reviewing all of our zoning codes and land uses, and that's been going on for a few months. We had an overview last Tuesday, and if you live within the city limits and stuff, you might want to give it a look over some of the suggested changes, because once we start approving, they go into effect, they'll impact zoning and number of units on properties and stuff. And of course, we're also doing the regional plan that'll be approved or not next year. So those are the two big happenings right now.
Any changes to temporary rentals, VRBOs, et cetera?
Until the state legislators let us have more control, all we've been able to do is require people that rent out a room or their home have a license and give us a 24-hour contact person in case there's a disturbance or a problem, that we have somebody that we can reach out to immediately. Other than that, it's protected by state statute, and we're not able to regulate it any more than that, unfortunately.
Do we have any way of enforcing that? Or is it just volunteer registration?
Well, our code enforcement team, how I understand it, does do periodic scans on, VRBO or Airbnb or just like Craigslist and stuff, and just do a spot check that way to see if anybody is in compliance. And there is a penalty structure if they don't comply with our license requirements and just different things that are embedded in that. And so, you know, and then we do take complaints. So that's a really helpful way to have our eyes out in the public is if somebody calls in and says, maybe this house is being rented, there's this room and they're having a big raging party. Or that they see that, you know, that people are really good about monitoring their neighborhoods, you know, making sure. I have 2 VRBOs on in our little cul-de-sac. And they're really quiet, so we don't really have too much of a problem, but I know other areas have really had an issue, and who knows, this weekend with graduation, there might be for sure some interesting reports, but we're doing everything we legally can. And just trying to lobby the state to give more power back to the different cities, because we each have a unique perspective on that, and just to let us, you know, regulate that. So hasn't happened yet, but that's one of the things we lobby on.
Where do we get the information on the zoning stuff?
I can have, we have a link. I
Oh,
didn't
okay.
come prepared, but I can send it to
That'd be good.
Brian or somebody, and if you guys want to take a look at it, that would be helpful.
Good. Anything else? Okay, airport operations, Brian.
Yeah, sounds great. So, see, we have some updates on employments, operations, and revenue for this month. So we're actually gonna do the, last 2 months, since we didn't have a meeting last month. So, March was significantly up from 2024 for employments, 24% increase year over year. And the 3rd highest March ever, which is really saying something, you know, because we've had several years in there when we had 2 carriers. So it's really, I think, a kind of outstanding month for us, big number for March's employments. April's employments were also up over last year, a 12% increase over 2024, but a little bit closer to kind of what we would have expected. A lot of that, we have a bunch of conversation going on with parking later on in the agenda. That's going to talk a lot about some employment data related to that. I think some of the questions we had the first time we talked about parking fees. One of the things that I've noticed is it really seems that the biggest metric that can correlate to our employments is number of seats available. So it really seems like we had a pretty good flight schedule for March. They had a few more flights than we've had in previous years. We had between 5 and 7 or 8 per day, depending on the day of the week, which is a pretty heavy March for us. And so it seems like when we have those seats available on aircraft, people are filling them, which is why I think that number was quite a bit higher in March. I think we are going to see that come down a little bit in May. The airline industry is reacting broadly to economic indices. We've seen a lot of airlines downgrade their outlooks. The short version of what that is bringing is a reduction in seat capacity. A bunch of air carriers are retiring their aircraft early. And if you retire an aircraft, even if it's in a different part of the country than Flagstaff, it still affects the seats available in the network. And so we're seeing a slight reduction in flights. May's tracking pretty close to normal. June's going to be a little bit down from what we're seeing, at least in terms of flight availability. Right now, the numbers we've heard nationally is we expect there to be 8% fewer seats in service this July than there were this time last year. So pretty big change. And I think we'll see that reflected in our employments as we go on through the rest of the year. But for now, at least we've seen more, and that's showing up in our numbers year to date.
Have you heard anything from like rental car people saying reservations are down? Are we getting impacted by the shutdown in foreign travel?
We have not heard that so far, but that the rental car rentals at the airport are out for bid right now. And so I don't think we're getting it. There's some limits on communication due to that bid being open right now. So I think that's something we'll have to see once those bids come in.
I know.
Gail has her hand raised as well.
Well, thanks, Adam. Brian, I have a question for you in regards to, I mean, first off, kudos to the 3rd busiest March in history. That's great. But my question is, I thought that we typically had 2 flights to Dallas and 2 flights back. And maybe it was just the luck of the draw for me, but I flew out 3 times in March and April at a Flag, and I only had one
No, I know.
option.
And
So I'm
I
just
have a team that
curious.
drive too, but it is just me as well. And
Oh.
so I understand your plight with that.
I
Okay.
think, just as viscerally, and it all does.
What's this?
Sorry about that, guys.
Andrew, Commissioner.
Commissioner Jackson, to your comment, yeah, that's correct. We've only seen one flight to Dallas. For the last few years, we have had two for certain seasons, right? So it depends on the time of year. The summer months, traditionally, we've only had one. Some of that has to do with the density altitude in Flagstaff. It's hard for them to take off when it gets really hot here and the amount of gas they have to take to get to Dallas. Made it challenging to do a flight outside the morning. But this time of year, we did traditionally have two. And we have seen two on certain days of the week, but it's been a little bit less frequent than normal. And I don't have a great answer for that. We're going to be speaking with American and SkyWest when we go to our Air Service Attraction Conference this June. So we'll try to get some additional data on that. But I think some of that comes down to some issues that DFW's been having. That's just speculation on my part, but we've seen weather impacts. We've seen aircrew availability impacts. We've seen a few more delays and cancellations from the Dallas route than we had at this time last year. And from what we're hearing from the airline, that is at least due to weather and aircraft capacity. So the SkyWest fleet, they've been through kind of a bunch of ups and downs in terms of fleet availability with pilot availability. We have heard that there's been some challenges with aircraft availability, but I'll try to confirm that in June when we go to that meeting.
I love that. And I guess what I'd love to see too is last March, did we have 2 flights a day to Dallas? Or was it spontaneous like it is now? So this data that we have here is enplanements, but how many available seats were there? I guess is my question.
Sure, that
Is it
I don't
right?
have that in
Am I
front of me.
reading that correctly? That the enplanements are the number of people that got on the plane, but so we had 7,200 in March, roughly. So how many available seats? Like what occupancy were we at?
I don't have that in front of me, but that is something we can get for you. So I can either send that out or we can try to add that to future months as a slide if you'd like.
I'd like to, I think
This,
that-
yeah, this data nerd would love that.
You got it. Yeah, sorry I don't have that today, but I'll get that out before our next meeting.
I think when we go to the airport conference, I would think that that'd be something that we would share with another airline to say, we're at 80% capacity or whatever that number is would be great.
Yep, for sure. That is usually in the data that we bring to those conferences. It's just not something that we track it generally year to year, not necessarily month to month. But I can pull those numbers together if that'd be of interest. So we have them. We just don't normally bring that in graph form.
I'd love that. Thanks so much, Brian.
Sure. Try to see if I had a March flight schedule handy from last year, but I couldn't find it in my email real quick. So yeah, we'll get that ready for the next one.
Next slide.
Yes, please. Okay, for total operations, operation being a takeoff and landing, March's operations were extremely high compared to last year. We were up 71%. And if you look at that graph there, by far among the highest we've ever had in March. We had one about 3 or 4 years ago that was close, but not as much as this March. And then April's operations were up 11% for 2024. I think a lot of that has to do with weather. We did have some snow in March this year, but relatively snow-free compared to some of our previous years. So you can kind of see that those March numbers and April numbers were tracking very high for those months, but not high across the calendar year. So I think that was some of that favorable flying weather that we saw that was bringing a little bit more of our visiting aircraft up here, as well as local base aircraft flying those months. For parking revenue, revenue was down 16% in March and down 10% in April. And this is one of those interesting statistics where we've seen enplanements go up, but parking revenue not necessarily. But if you look back to January, when enplanements were down or track normal, parking revenue was up. So this is one of those things that I'm going to talk about a little bit more when we get to our parking rate discussion. But right now, at least, we are not seeing a strong correlation between enplanements and parking revenue. One of the things I think to note about that is about 60% of our passenger traffic originates outside of Flagstaff, meaning people that came here as their destination and then go back home. So only about 40% of our passenger traffic are people that are in the region that are flying out of Flagstaff and then potentially coming back. So it could be why there's not always a direct correlation between those two. It is less than a majority of our customers that we even have the capacity to use our parking lots. But it is just kind of an interesting stat as we're getting close to our 2-year mark of that parking system. For fuel flow, March's fuel flow was up 38% for 2024. I think that kind of reflects those operations numbers. Similarly, or actually April's fuel flow report, they're typically due at the 10th of the month. This was an early meeting, the way the schedules fell, so we've not received the fuel flow reports for April. We will add that before the next meeting. Yeah, fuel flow typically tracks fairly closely with those aircraft operation numbers, so I think we see that increase based on the number of flights we saw in the area.
We have FBO on.
Don't believe we have anybody from Wiseman. We did include their slides from last month, just in case they had any representatives here today, but we might advise skipping over those if we don't have anybody to provide context to them.
Yeah, let's go ahead and skip it over then. Okay. To the projects and grant guru.
Who's that?
That'd be you, sir.
Thank you, commissioners. Adam Yele, Flagstaff Airport Programs Manager. I'm gonna go over just a few quick little slides here. The one item we would like to start off with is our Airport Express Visitor Center. Also in conjunction with our micro market, since they're such a close proximity. So we're talk a little bit about both of those, but I'd like to focus primarily on that visitor center. Currently, that particular project is going to receive a storefront as part of the project. That has been ordered and we're waiting for the contractor to take delivery, but they are still moving forward with the work behind the shielded wall. There is a large glulam beam that was constructed on site and was placed and hung. So what that's going to be used to help secure the storefront. That work has been completed. The old wrap that was on the wall has been removed and we have retextured and repainted that. So that's ready to receive some of the slat wall that we're gonna be putting in there. So it's moving along nicely. On our last meeting, I was gonna also indicate that we did get our 2 sewer connections that we needed for the micro mart. I'm gonna bounce around a little bit here. That was part of that original Visitor Express contract. So we got in 2 sewer connections and 2 water connections, and that's for our now existing coffee maker. I don't know if everyone's seen that we do have a coffee maker now down there. And we put in capacity for a second machine. If we find that there's a need for it, then we can go ahead and just pull the trigger. So I'll have a sewer and a water connection associated with that. As well as we did some electrical improvements in the area. We needed to get some dedicated circuits for the equipment that's going in. That work was installed and completed. And currently we are looking at the end of May. The project should be done. So come June, hopefully we are just doing some finish work on that, some touch up and some punch list items. So that project should be completed here at the end of this month. Next item, I have a few slides on this. This is the snow removal equipment building. I know it's been a while since we've discussed this particular project here internally to any great length, but we've had a lot of movement on this project. Currently, just to do a small recap, this project's been several years in the making. The project has evolved, and because of that evolution, we've had some of our partners over at FAA have left and come. We've gotten some new project managers, new engineers, and new planners over the time since this project has started, and we're working on, I believe, our 4th or 5th engineer. But super great gentleman. Sean is he's great. We were able to secure a contractor that was a competitive bid that went out. We made a selection on that and moved forward with the contractor. The reason why that's important is because we were approved to do what's known as construction manager at risk. It's when we get to have the design team and the contracting team in the same room and say, okay, what are some of the shortfalls? What are some of the things that we need to be doing trending? For example, like steel right now is the prices are going up quite a bit. So we can have conversations with the contractor to say, okay, what would you advise? Do we want to look at CMU block wall, or do we still want to go pre-engineered metal building? So we can have those conversations early on and see what's trending. As part of that, we brought a 60% package to the contractor to review, and they reviewed it and gave us some pricing and what they thought would be what their estimate would be for those plans. And so what we did is we got an estimate of approximately $33 million for the project. Then we met with our NAU friends, and obviously it's outside of our budget.
FAA.
FAA, did I say NAU?
Yeah.
I'm looking at your hat, sir. FAA, and then we started having some conversations of what would be eligible and ineligible per the grants. And we had to look at what the funds that we had available per our agreement with the FAA. And so there's actually three funding sources. So we get our entitlement funding that we would get, and that's a direct result of our employments. So that's every year we get the entitlement. And then we have our bill money. There was 5 years of that, correct, Brian?
Right.
Which is
Bipartisan infrastructure law.
correct.
Yeah.
And it's approximately about the same as what we would get in entitlements. Pretty close.
Mhm.
And then the third would be discretionary. And so we've been bankrolling this, I believe, for 5 years now.
Yeah, we've been banking the 5 years of bill and at least 3 or 4 years of our entitlement funding. To try to create our base value for what we had to start with the project before asking for discretionary funding. It's a competitive grant process from the FAA.
And we're looking to ask for some additional funding through that third element, which is going to be discretionary funding. And so with our FAA grants, you can see on the screen here, we're between $9 and $13 million, which is quite a bit more than 33 or less than 33. So what we decided to do is we decided to not value engineering because it's got kind of a negative connotation for some people, myself included. We did some right sizing of the facility. $10 million of that 33 was due to site work, because the amount of earthwork that needed to be done as part of this, as well as retaining walls and some relocation of infrastructure, water lines, gas line. So what we did was we said, okay, let's kind of right size this, and let's look at coming up with a view of if we had a building, a facility that could house all of our equipment now, plus a wash bay and a maintenance bay, because we don't have a maintenance shop for any of our equipment here. It has to go to fleet, or fleet has to come out here. What would that look like? So we went down that rabbit hole, and we started having conversations with our design partners as well as our contractors. At the same time, having conversations with our FAA friends as well, and they fully supported us going through this exercise. And so that's what we've been doing for the past couple months. Okay, we went through the exercise. We came up with some plans of what that would look like. Originally, the original $33 million here is on the slide shown on the screen. On the left-hand side would be our original $33 million, and on the right would be our revised or right-sized program. We went from 2,500 square feet down to 1,600 square feet, 16,000 square feet. Thank you. 6 bays with for storage of 12 vehicles to 4 bays for storage of 8 vehicles. I should note that we currently in our inventory have 8 snow removal equipment pieces. So it would house what we have right now. And in our ASIP, we're looking at doing a couple of replacements. A couple of our pieces are aged out, so we wouldn't be adding to our fleet, at least that we're envisioning in the immediate future. Both of them would have a wash bay, maintenance bay. We did have some, what we're loosely calling administrative space, lockers and things like that for our attempts to change and some restroom facilities, but we removed that. The FAA indicated they thought that would be not eligible for the grant funding. So we said, well, if it's not eligible, we need to strike it. Because we need to try to get this down as much as possible, make it all as much as we can
Did that,
in line with,
did that include restrooms?
It did.
it did, the original one did.
So
And they
there's no
said,
restrooms in this new
this will
building?
have, no,
Yes, the FAA has all of the big umbrella project that Adam was, or grant funding sources that Adam was talking about, all fall under this umbrella of what we call the AIP program, the Airport Improvement Program, which is the grant program that the FAA uses to administer the funding that Congress allocates for airports. And it comes with this big book called AIP Handbook that shows everything down to what color the paint needs to be and like it's very, or references other documents that show those things. And one of them is, there's a whole section in there on what is eligible for snow removal equipment building facilities. And some of the things that we found out as we went further on, as Adam mentioned, we've been through a bunch of different staff members at FAA. I think our latest one has been really good at working with us and working through that handbook and figuring out which things are eligible or not. Anything that is for support of personnel essentially is not eligible for a snow removal equipment building. It's for vehicle storage. That is the intent of the building, storage and maintenance. So anything that we will want to add, whether it's lockers or if there was any desks in there, for example, or if there was restrooms even, would not be considered eligible for federal funding. But part of this project was intentionally sited next to our existing aircraft rescue and firefighting station, which is where our operations team also is. So it's really only a walk across the driveway into our facility where all of our offices and restrooms and kitchen and everything already are.
Can I make a comment? I've done a lot of grant writing through my nonprofit work that I used to do. And that is so critical to go through and see those things that are not included, because that's the biggest mistake. Agencies that they're seeking grants, whether they're nonprofit or federal and stuff, is they include stuff that's not allowed. And then it either you get turned down or it's excluded, and then they cut back the funding, and it can really have a negative impact. So I'm glad that that was identified and moved out, because that was just a smart move. If it's not included and not part of their scope of funding, then definitely needed to keep it out.
But having experience with having a maintenance building with no restrooms where you expect guys to do a lot of work.
yeah.
Not a morale builder by any means.
As Brian indicated, right next door is our
That's
building.
better. I mean,
Yeah.
as long as they're not out in the
Dark
field.
outside.
Because maintenance guys will find a way, I'll just tell you that.
Moving on, kind of where we are on the next steps. We're going to be meeting with our FAA friends in 2 weeks to kind of go over our revised numbers. We did do an exercise already with them, 2 exercises, as a matter of fact, to go over every component of the project that we felt that may be a question as far as eligibility and ineligibility. And through those 2 meetings, because our guidance is a little bit different than we had several years ago, we made those modifications. So we're hopeful that that conversation goes really, really well with our FAA counterparts. And once we have kind of a buy-off from them, then what we need to do is what we're seeing here is just a concept on the screen. What we've done working with our contractors, we just basically reduced the size, but now we have to formally do a full design.
Are they drive-through based?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Yes, they are. All the way through. What we'll need to do is we'll need to get some construction ready plans. So we're going to have some renegotiations with our design partners because the scope has changed quite a bit. So
When
that's me, I apologize.
when you talk about
Remember?
when you talk about future expansion, I know the last time we talked about this was a lot of it was ground prep and site prep. Is that prep only going to be for the new building, or is it going to be in anticipation of the expansion?
We've laid this out in such a way where we can add another pull-through bay. And the intention is, right now, moving forward, that as we're coming up through the subgrade, any of the changes that we need to do for understructure will also be done in this extra addition that we can do at a later time.
Okay.
So we're gonna, pardon the pun, but we're gonna lay the groundwork now for that expansion if it flags or
That makes
warrants
more
it.
sense.
And maybe to piggyback on what Adam's saying, with the earthwork that's gonna be included as part of this initial package, we could add one bay without doing any additional earthwork. We could expand it to the full original building footprint with additional site prep. So it's built at the right elevation. We could build new retaining walls and expand that footprint if we need to in the future for more than that additional bay. But as designed now, it'll allow a one bay expansion without too much work, and potentially 1 to 2 more bays after that if needed,
Okay.
with significant more earthwork again.
Correct. Thank you, Brian.
Told you guys I want this built before I die.
I second that motion.
But we're talking about the speed of government.
I do think that a question came up in the chat. Did somebody want to,
Yeah, this is Commissioner Schaus. Can you guys hear me? I'm sorry about that earlier. I had to tie up a meeting.
Oh,
I've gotten several questions from citizens about the overall cost of this building at 33 million for 25,000 square feet. I mean, even 19.5 million for 16,000 square feet. Can we not just find a contractor who can build this for a reasonable amount? Because those sums are just unreasonable for the type of building that you guys are talking about building. And that's what I'm hearing from the public.
okay. Thank you for the
Working
question.
on projects though in the past, I think it's a lot, like that earthwork is really expensive. Isn't that the majority of the cost?
It was a little over $10 million originally was the earthwork,
so roughly a third?
a third.
And some of that is, so the
Yeah, but
building. Go ahead. Say, so the
Well,
building.
$10 million in dirt work for a $9.5 million building that's 16,500 square feet. Again, these numbers just don't add up. You can buy a 25,000 square foot metal shed online. Well, it's 180% more than it used to be, but you know, I'm confused because in talking to even a couple contractors, you know, they're like 25,000 square foot vehicle storage, you know, a couple $1 million.
Well, there's several other components. It's not just the earthwork, Commissioner. Also, this is going to be a pre-engineered metal building. We're going to have potentially a 3-ton crane that's got to go above this. So there's a lot of structural work that's part of this as well. So it's not an over-the-counter kind of permit, if you will. This is going to be a very large structure. Go ahead.
I just built my own ICF house and,
Okay.
you know, it has beams, it's industrial, 6-inch concrete walls, and I built for 125 a square foot. So I'm just, again, putting this all up against reasonability, and I see on the screen, it says final pricing from contractor. Have we sent this out for a second, third, or fourth bid to back up this pricing? Because citizens have approached me about this,
Okay.
like asking what is going on with that? How could that be?
Can I back up a little bit and maybe go back to how this building, first off, how it's designed and how it came to be where it is, where this earthwork cost is what it is. So starting from zero, right? Everything that we do in the airport has to be done in conjunction with the airport master plan and the airport layout plan that's done in it. So that's a process that's done every 10 to 15 years where the FAA goes through and basically approves the 15 to 20-year capital plan for the airport. Now, the siting in this building was analyzed as part of that master plan, and it's due in part response times for snow removal. So as part of the FAA advisory circulars for commercial service airports that operate under FAR Part 139, we have to have a certain response time to clear our priority 1 areas of snowfall. So it says how much equipment you should have, how many staff you should have, where the building should be sited to get that much snowfall cleared from an airport in a certain amount of time. I think it's 30 minutes for a certain capacity of snowfall. So this site was selected based on that. And so the earthwork is expensive for that site, but that's partially because it's just, the reason it's next to our ARF station is it needs to be sort of right in the middle of the airfield. So those vehicles can be dispatched as quickly as possible possible to clear that. And so that's
So-
partially where earthwork comes from, to meet the grading requirements to get those heavy vehicles to the airfield without traversing a slope that exceeds the capacity for them to do with their blades on. So that's partially where the,
So have we sent it out for another bid? I mean,
well, so,
again,
I'm
$10 million for the $10 million for the earthwork to me actually sounds pretty very high as well. I just don't have any contacts that are excavating contractors to say, hey, does this sound high to you?
So Commissioner, if like I go another couple steps further, so now once the building site is set, right, we have to build the building in conjunction with the FAA standards for construction and snow removal buildings, which I mentioned, there is a FAA specification for all the things we're talking about here. One of the other major expenses is just the size of the equipment. So Adam, can you remind me, what is the standard bay door size on this?
Originally, we had 35-foot openings. Now we're down to 28.
So these are almost 30-foot doors each, right? And then we're potentially 35 at some point, so that those vehicles with their runway size plows versus street size plows could operate in them. So they're considerably bigger bays than you would find in a regular vehicle storage garage. And so those spans get longer, those seal costs get longer, the cost of the doors get bigger. And then to your question about bidding, so as Adam mentioned, we went through a process called construction manager at risk. So the FAA allows for a few different procurement methods for contractors. One being what we call hard bid, right? Design, bid, build, which is where an engineer goes in and designs the whole site, the architect and the engineer. They put together a bid package. It goes out. Everybody gets an equal opportunity to put prices to it. You go with the low bidder automatically. Now, for projects that are a little bit more complex, or ones that are going for where you might have variable options for building materials, or maybe you can find some efficiencies there, there's an opportunity for a construction manager to risk procurement, which means the airport writes up a package for what you want the final product to be, and you select contractors based on qualifications rather than based on price. But the FAA, the federal government in general, does not issue grant funding without a competitive pricing process too. So once that construction manager at risk is on board, they're required to go out for every subcomponent and get bids from multiple subcontractors and prove that they've done their due diligence.
Okay.
So essentially, every item on this project has been bid by 2 to 5 subcontractors
but-
to get.
But when was it bid?
That is an
Because
ongoing
the
process.
when is a big deal in this. In my own house, my lumber package went from 68,000 to 333,000. That's what led me to change to the ICF product, which allowed me to buy all of my, bulk materials for 72,000. So it still went up, but it didn't go up nearly as high. And so knowing that this has been a years long process, I'm just worried if we're seeing some of those supply chain holdups and some of this pricing, some of the glut that was COVID when prices did go extreme for a short time. And now they're all back to a closer relative to normal.
Brian, can I make a question, a comment?
Sure.
This is a federal grant process, and so wages have to be Davis-Bacon.
They do have to be Davis-Bacon, yeah, and everything has to be
There
by
you are.
American. So all the materials in this have to be by American, including the steel. That's a federal grant requirement.
So Davis-Bacon rules every worker on there gets paid a premium rate, not market rate. It's about what, 2.5, 3 times market rate, if I
I can
remember.
speak to that in detail, but I know it's generally more
It's
expensive.
a lot higher, so it's not you can't compare it to a private build. You have to get, like you said, American made everything, and you have to have Davis-Bacon, and so you have to have contractors that can provide a Davis-Bacon wage, because it's a lot of bookkeeping, a lot of paperwork.
Yeah,
And they have to prove that they paid all of their, so if I was a $25 an hour person and I did a Davis-Bacon job, I'm probably close to $45 an hour just for that job.
that's a great point, Councilmember Matthews. In addition to that, so we did talk briefly about the Buy American. So that applies not just to the final component, doesn't mean made in America. It means the component. So for example, garage door openers. Not only does the garage door opener have to be manufactured in America, but the last 2 steps of its production process, meaning potentially the building of the wires that serve it, have to be done in America, and the extruding of the copper that goes into the wires has to be done in America. So you have to certify
Yeah,
all.
but this has to be held up against reality of what we can actually get and source in America, doesn't it?
It does. There's about a 6-month process you can go through to get a waiver for Buy American materials. And really, the only time they'll give it to you is if there is no American supplier that can do it. So if there's an American supplier that can do it, even at a premium cost, the federal government through legislation has said that is the priority for federal funding to be used that way. So we are required to use those
Gotcha.
unless it's not available.
And then I'd like to kind of wrap this up in a quick little bow. When we send this over to the FAA to review and approve moving forward with the contractor, we also have to give an independent fee estimate as part of the project as well. So we have to have an independent contractor look at the project as well. Once we have the construction ready plans, we do go out for an estimate from another contractor. So that is part of the stream as well, but that comes later on. We've got a lot of work to do between now and then.
And as Adam mentioned earlier, these numbers are still estimates. So like you mentioned, Commissioner Schaus, numbers do fluctuate drastically right now. But there is a requirement in the contract for the amount of time a contractor has to honor those prices. For now, though, these are estimates until final plans are approved. So once the final plans are approved by the building department, that is when the contractor puts the bow on their final prices, and that's when we make our final grant application to get to that final number. So for now, this is really part of the planning process. And all this has to be tied to the federal grant cycle. So federal grants come out once a year for the FAA AIP program. So we have to have the number ready to go as close to those grants being available as possible so that the contractor will be willing to stand by them. If we do it too early, they tend to build in some price increases that may or may not happen. So our goal is to try to get the final plans done and the final bid price done close enough to the grant cycle that those prices will be accurate. We won't have to go out for change orders later.
Does that
I,
question, sir?
well, I appreciate, I mean, it does and it doesn't, because I mean, at least insofar as the public who's talked to me about this, they watch our meetings and that we would be using taxpayer money to, build something that we could build for 5 million if we push the FAA to build it in a different spot or do something differently. That's what I'm hearing from the public is just, it's a possible misuse of funds, and, nobody knows if it is or is not. But I understand the needs for an industrial sized building and the differences for sure. But also, like, putting all those additional cost forbearances, it's our public might not be happy about this building, even though we are.
Okay, I think we beat this horse to death. I think your comments are well placed and the concerns, but I think the team has answered them as best they can. They are not in control of the FAA rules and funding. And we're all concerned with money and grants. And there's nothing saying that even if we get this down, that the FAA is going to have a grant available. As we all know, those kind of things are in flux every day in DC right now. But appreciate your comments. I know Brian and Adam are going to take them to heart, but I think they're working within a constraint of what the FAA requires. So thanks.
And I understand, and I really thank you guys.
And next, future milestones, we'll be bringing it back, Commissioner. Next projects real quick. We have upcoming project that's going to be starting here mid-June. It's Airfield Maintenance Phase 6. This particular project is to correct some discrepancies that we have found last year when we did our Part 139 inspection. The meat of this particular project is going to be rubber removal on top of the pavement markings on the runway. So that will require some obliteration of the existing markings and replacement of those markings as well. We do have hold surface position markers at Alpha 1 that's going to be redone. We have some large thermal cracks in our blast pads, both on 2-1 and 3. Those are going to be, we're going to do some maintenance on those, route them out and fill them back in. And we've got some on the ramp lighting that needs to be addressed. We've got several lights that are out on the GA side or the transitory or transit apron that are completely out that are going to be replaced. And we've got some signage that we're going to be installing per recommendations from the FAA along our RSA runway safety area, just notifying that they are entering into the RSA on the perimeter road, and they need to get permission from Tower or CTAF. And that's expected to be completed mid-July, so it's about a 1-month duration. Primarily, the work that's going to be done on the runway will be done during night closures. So we do not anticipate at this time that it'll affect any commercial flights at this time.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
How many, because I live near here, how many private planes come in after hours?
It varies. So Flagstaff Airport's total annual operations are usually in the neighborhood of 36,000, which is pretty nice because it's a nice one to figure out daily operations, right? So we get about 100 aircraft operations a day. So if you kind of divide that out over the day, it's not that many per hour, and they really tend to be concentrated during daylight, right? Because those VFR, the visual flight rules operations, are flying during those daylight hours. It does vary from day to day. Our heaviest users for the nighttime are commercial flights when they have late scheduled arrivals. Sometimes will happen as late as 10 or 11 p.m. And then medevac flights that are transporting patients due to either emergencies or scheduled transports between medical facilities. There's of course others to that. Some folks do fly at night, or we do get private aircraft that come in at night. But it's generally in the single digits to low double digits.
Do we notify the military? Because I know sometimes they do it touch and go.
Anytime we do a nightly runway closure or any closure of any airfield facility, even if it's a taxiway that doesn't prevent aircraft operations, we have to issue what's called a NOTAM, which is a notice to airmen. So that system, we publish at least 72 hours in advance, notifying folks that is going to be, that facility will be closed for whatever duration. And we do generally reach out to our tenants and some of our more frequent operators as far in advance as we have a date, so we can kind of remind them that that's upcoming. It's also important to note that the runway might be closed for a portion of those, but generally the ramp stays open. So helicopter operations, medical helicopter operations can still be ongoing. So some of our medical transport companies do have both options, so they can sort of switch gears and move to helicopter for a few nights if they need to move patients around during that time.
Thank you.
And finally, our
It is a
Oh,
It is
go
a
ahead.
requirement for pilots to check the NOTAMs too, so that's part of their pre-flights. So that's how they know.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Finally, we have ADOT airport pavement management system warranty items. We did some rubber removal a couple of summers ago, and there was some issue with some of the pavement markings that were placed. We found that they were blistering, so they're needing to come back up here and reshoot some of that paint. We're currently working with them to try to find a time when they're going to be coming, but I just wanted to kind of put this on the radar, pun intended, that this is also coming forward. The warranty items were identified in 24, and most of this work is going to be taxiway alpha work. And once we start identifying when they can come back up here, we'll notify everybody. Any questions?
All right, Claire Harper is at an air service conference this week, so she won't be joining us for communications and business updates, but I do have a few updates in her absence. We have a few minutes for this. So first one is Claire and I both went on the Jeff Kennedy show, which is on CAF News Radio here locally in Flagstaff on Friday, May 2nd. To discuss for a few minutes some airport updates. The items we touched on were a recap of 2024. So look back at our employments, with it being our 4th highest year ever, and a kind of record year for us in terms of a low number of cancellations. We actually only had 8 canceled departures for all of last year and 1,500 on-time departures, more than 1,500 on-time departures. So really kind of a banner year for the airport's performance of our commercial flights. Additionally, we touched on the new micro markets and coffee kiosks that Adam mentioned that have now been installed on both sides of the security checkpoint. We talked about our air service attraction efforts, including the upcoming Jumpstart Air Service Development Conference that we'll be attending in June, along with Councilmember Matthews, to try to talk to some additional airlines and try to find some additional air service here. And then we hit on the Transportation Security Administration's Real ID deadline and implementation, which happened earlier this week on May 7th. So that requirement to have those IDs that are compliant with that TSA Real ID information, and gave out some information for anybody who doesn't have one of those for how they can find them. If anybody needs one in Arizona, the website I believe is azmvdnow.com or maybe .gov. Don't quote me on that. But it's the DMV website for state of Arizona where you can get start the application online, and I think potentially you have to go in person to finish it and bring some identification forms to get those Real ID compliant IDs. And you can also use passports, passport cards, or global entry if anybody has those. But we have seen that go off fairly smoothly so far this week. We have a number of passengers that have arrived without a Real ID. There is an additional screening process they can go through to still board flights. We've seen some slightly extended wait times, but so far relatively smooth for that rollout. Additionally, I did kind of touch on it as part of that last item, but we will be going to an air service conference in June to meet with some additional airlines and try to get additional air service here in Flagstaff. Any questions on communications or media outreach?
Is in your professional or personal opinion, is it getting darker for regional expansion with all the airline things that are coming on?
It's been a really tricky year. It looked really sunny through about first half of the first quarter of this year, where the airline outlooks from all the major carriers showed extreme growth. We were expecting a lot of expansion over the course of the year. Most of the major carriers have started to pull that back a little bit. We are seeing a little bit of a retraction in travel right now. How that impacts the regional carrier versus the main line is going to be hard to say. Right now, it seems to be fairly proportional, where everybody's kind of shrinking together. But it does seem like it's going to be maybe not quite as big a year as we thought it was going to be at the beginning of the year.
Okay.
All right, we're on discussion items.
Okay, we did have a few discussion and action items that we want to talk about today. The first being airport parking rates. Now, recall we brought this a few months ago. I'm going to go over a little bit about what we talked about in that previous meeting, but we're going to start with some background on parking here at the airport. So the airport has two customer-centric parking lots. One is the terminal lot, which was originally constructed in 1993 and expanded in 97. Contains approximately 380 parking spaces. The new lot that we finished in 23, finished in 22 and opened in 23, was the economy lot, which has 413 parking spaces, still within walking distance of the airport terminal, but a little bit further away. In conjunction with the opening of the new economy parking lot, we introduced our paid parking system in early 2023, with it being rolled out officially in mid-July of 2023. So that's, we have 4 entrances and 4 exits to the parking lot, so 2 each. So for 8 entry and exit lanes total, with a paid parking system that's automated where folks can pay at the parking kiosk as they exit the lot. Next slide, please, Adam. So our current rates, which were adopted by council in 2021, but did not officially go into effect until that paid parking system was installed in 2023, are $2 an hour after the first hour. So first hour free for both parking lots, with a maximum daily rate of the terminal lot of $8, and maximum daily rate in the economy lot of $6. And then there is a discount for vehicles that stay for over a week, with a weekly rate of $48 for the terminal lot and $36 for the economy lot. So this is the slide that we proposed a few months ago for review by the Airport Commission for potential changes to the airport parking rates and fees. So the ones that I highlighted in green were ones that were supported by a vote of the commissioners in that meeting, which was the addition of a lost ticket fee and the addition of a monthly parking fee for both parking lots. So the monthly parking rate that was proposed for the terminal lot was $160 per month, which is essentially 2 days per week versus 1 day per free day per week under the weekly rate. So essentially you pay for 20 days to stay in the parking lot for a month, plus or minus. And then the lost ticket fee is about a week and a half's worth of the parking rate. And those are for folks that maybe have lost their ticket on their trip and the system is unable to find through license plate recognition. So there are some backup features there where if a ticket is lost, it still should be able to read a plate and come up with a number, but if there's not there, currently those vehicles are being let out without charge because we don't necessarily have the staff to go out there, especially overnight hours to let them out of the lot or try to figure out what their transaction was. So this is sort of in line with what we've seen from other airports. And as I mentioned, those were previously approved by the Airport Commission. Now, the rates that were not approved in that commission meeting are the ones in red in that rightmost column, which some commissioners had asked for some additional information, which we'll be presenting later in this presentation. But those were an increase of $2 per day for the terminal lot to bring it from $8 to $10 per day. And then the associated changes to the rates further down the schedule. And for the economy lot, it was a proposed change of $1, bringing that lot from $6 a day to $7 per day. For a rate increase there. Now, here's a little bit of background on where those proposed rates came from. I mentioned a little bit of this before briefly, but here it is kind of written out. So the weekly rate is 6 times the daily rate, so essentially 1 free day per week, with the monthly rate being 5 times the daily rate or 2 free days per week. The lost ticket fee is 1.5 weeks of parking. And just for some little additional background information there, the proposed terminal lot increase would be about a 5.6% increase year over year since the adoption of that initial fee. And the economy lot increase would pencil out to about a 3.7% annual increase. Now, these might be a little bit small, and I do have this information repeated a few times, but this is a comparison of airport parking fees that we did across the region as we were setting this up. So comparable airports we looked at included Prescott, Yuma, Montrose, St. George, Durango, Plata County, Phoenix Mesa Gateway, or actually now just Mesa Gateway Airport, Tucson International, and Phoenix Sky Harbor. So you can see on those that the hourly or the daily rates vary between about $7 to $16. We did try to look at lots that were comparable to ours, so we tried to exclude parking garages, for example, that might be a different level of service. Though I think it is important to note that, for example, some of those lesser expensive lots, like the economy lot at Tucson International, do require a shuttle bus ride. They're off-site and require a bus ride rather than a walk. So they're not quite apples to apples, but this was the comparison we looked at. A few of those lots do offer monthly rates. Those monthly rates vary from $125 to $260 per month. And the lost ticket fees also vary quite substantially and are some of them are quite high. They vary between about $150 and $350 per lost tickets. So recall that our lost ticket fee was about a week and a half worth of parking. So it'd be $72 for the current rate, $54 for the economy lot, and with proposed increases associated with those as well. One of the questions that came up when we previously discussed this was what effects parking fees might have on employments. So this is a look back at the last 9 years of our employment data with some context added in there. So you can see on there a spike when United added their service to Denver in 2019. Obviously the down year in 2020 with our COVID travel restrictions. Another high year in 2021 as travel rebounded after COVID. And then kind of a medium high year when United was here for most of the year and suspended service in October before the last 2 years that we've talked about more in more detail more recently. Just recall that paid parking systems started in July of 2023, and we did see a 7% increase in employments from 2023 to 2024, with 2024 being our fourth highest employments ever and the highest with service from a single carrier. Here's some additional information we pulled together for parking and employment trends. Of note is 60% of our commercial passenger traffic originates outside of Flagstaff, meaning people who don't live in the Flagstaff or Northern Arizona region, but are rather traveling here and then flying back home. Our paid parking system did begin in July of 2023. And in 2024, so our first full year of the paid parking system, 66% of our customers parked in the terminal lot and 34% parked in the economy lot. So by a 2-to-1 margin, our customers are parking in the more expensive of our 2 lots currently. Typical parking utilization is about 30 to 40% in an average week during the year, but it has exceeded 50% on more of our holiday weekends when peak travel season gets here. Our employments, as I mentioned, were up 7% from in 2024 over 2023. And just looking at this year, what we've seen so far is our employments in the first quarter of 2025 were up 11% from the first quarter of 2024. So we are seeing a jump in employments even year over year with the parking system in place. That's also up 2% from the first quarter of 2023, which was before back when parking was still free. So we have seen a jump in employments first quarter of the year for both years since paid parking has been implemented. Another thing to note is that our average airfare has remained roughly steady between 2023 and 2024. Just controlling a little bit for ticket prices there, because obviously that can have an effect on employments as well. So that's a lot of background information. We can go back to any of those slides if there's some additional discussion. But just a reminder on what happens when we talk about fee changes in the airport commission meetings. We discussed it today. I'd like to give the commissioners an opportunity to vote on those proposed changes. We can revise and come back if necessary. Then we'll publish a public notice. It's a 60-day public notice period for any fee changes in the city of Flagstaff. In conjunction with that public notice, we'll go to city council for review and city council for potential action on voting on potential fee changes. It's important to note that whatever the decision is, because we already have some fees we're going to be bringing to council, we're going to be giving a similar presentation to this to the council along with the recommendation of the airport commission. So whether it's in favor of or in opposition to some of those fees, we'll be presenting all that data to city council for their vote when it gets to that stage as well.
Can I make a comment? And I apologize, I'm going to have to leave to another meeting.
Sure.
I think it's important information. City council in one of our retreats just told Park Flag that we approved the hourly rate for downtown to be up to $2 from $1 and 7 days a week. I think right now it's just during the week or something, but it is kind of in line with the increase in services and stuff. So that'll be coming in. And I parked in private lots downtown. Shockingly, didn't realize, and it was $4.85, and I've been booted once before. I don't get any privileges, but I apologize for having to leave to go to another meeting. Oh, thank you. But thank you so much. And if you have any questions, I'll try to get that information on the last cap, is what they call it.
Thanks.
Before you leave, can we just ask you how you would vote on those parking increases? Do you see them as reasonable, or?
I do see them as reasonable, yeah. I don't
So
think my vote counts, but I would be in favor of
Okay.
them, yes.
All right.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Councilmember Matthews.
Thank you.
Real quick, we do have a hand raised.
Oh,
Commissioner Schausch.
Commissioner
Yeah,
Shell.
hey there. Yeah, I wanted to say thank you for all the data because I think I had asked for that. Just a point, I was curious. So the occupancy rate currently is about 30 to 40%. For reference, what was the occupancy rate prior to the parking lot improvements and parking upgrades?
That's a tricky question, in part because we only had one parking lot at a time. So before we opened the economy lot and the associated paid parking system, we only had the terminal lot, which is about 385 spaces at the time. It was generally close to 100%.
All the time,
possibly
right?
Over 100%. We had cars double parked, blocking other cars in. We had vehicles parking in the landscaping.
Yeah.
We had cars parked up and down the street, which was part of the reason they placed some boulders there, because they were parked right up against the airport perimeter fence. What we heard anecdotally was that a number of those vehicles were not people that were using the airport. Rather, they were people who had vehicles that, maybe needed a place to park, or maybe didn't want to pay for a parking permit at a university or an apartment complex. But yeah, it was essentially the lot was always full, and overflow parking spilled to various parts of the airport. I should mention that 30 to 40% is of the current parking capacity, not the previous parking capacity. So that was 100% of 385 spaces. Now we're at say 35% of 800 spaces.
Yeah. Well, and so overall, the way that I'm still thinking about this is with any like paid limited amount of space service, I would want pricing up against the occupancy with a goal of being as near 100% occupancy as possible. And at least the way that I would look at it is to try to price so that we're getting the maximum amount of people parking here that doesn't do anything to say negatively impact airport business. Because
That's a
that would
great.
maximize revenue. And that's the only, yeah, that was the only reason I was a little bit shy against the proposed price increases. Because if we're only at 30 or 40% occupancy compared to 100% occupancy, even with it being less spaces, there's a lot of room to get more revenue out of volume as opposed to a higher price.
I think you're kind of missing the point on that. I think if you lowered it down to $5 or lowered it down any amount of money, you wouldn't get any greater occupancy because of the number of people who fly out of Flagstaff. That's who's parking here. And the other thing is the parking lot, we still owe money on it, correct?
We've actually, we have paid it back. So
Okay.
we have
So-
paid back the conversion of the cost. So this is
So,
going to
so
operations.
it's another one of the few revenue generating and now in a positive light for the airport. And I think the staff did a great job of showing that the increase would not be detrimental to the parking out here based on what the parking is in other regional areas. I think it's important to remember that when you look at the economy lots parking at the other airports, none of them are walk to the terminal parking lots. They are all out in the middle of the desert, and it's a bus ride back in, adding, at least a half an hour to an hour of your arrival time if you're parking in those lots. So,
Totally.
yeah.
But what about Prescott? Would anybody in the room consider Prescott to be one of our
No,
largest competitive airports?
No, because Prescott, if I don't take your thunder
I'm just-
away, neither you two.
No, I'm curious.
Prescott is under a whole different regional payment system. They're being subsidized for having that regional airport. So
Yeah.
right now, they're probably not worried about their parking lot being a revenue generator. Am I
Yeah.
close?
No, and that was my point in raising this though, is so like to me, the real question would be, yes, are the price increases okay? They can be okay. That is possible, but if we're running 30, say that it was a fixed number, 35% occupancy on the lot, and we raise the price and we drop to 30% occupancy,
I don't think
that would
that's
be a
gonna happen.
negative, that would be a negative result of our rate increase when there is that possibility, especially if it's paid for, to make this an even more profitable endeavor for the airport.
Yeah, I don't see that percentage dropping, do you?
Well, so I mean, I don't, I mean, we're making a recommendation here, but of course, that's why
I mean, we
we
went from
Dean,
zero, we went from $0 to $2 from 100% to 30%. And I mean, that's my point. If it was
No,
$0,
we
we
did
know it
not.
would be occupied at
You're
100% all the
mixing,
time.
the 100% was not people parking for airport operations. Probably
No, but it was the airport parking lot though, servicing the airport. I know it was 60% people weren't coming to the airport. I totally understand
The
that.
drop was because of the increase in parking spaces. So it went from 380 spaces to 780 spaces. That's why the percentage dropped.
Mhm. Well, no, but my point is if the price is free, we'd get 100% utilization. Okay. If the price is something, we're going to get a certain amount of occupancy based on people who see this as a benefit for them within our community. The reason a bunch of people parked there was because it was free parking and they didn't think they would get in trouble. Well, we're adding an annual pass to our parking, which would say, hey, there are open parking spots for people who want to park their vehicle here on an ongoing basis. And so, yeah, given that we're kind of opening the door towards what it used to be at a $0, but as a paid for service, I'm still just curious if that increases the occupancy in a way that makes this more profitable without us having to increase our rates.
It's a great point, some great comments. If I could add a little bit more context to these things that I maybe didn't mention in the slideshow that could have been helpful. As Commissioner Schaus mentioned, we have been trying to kind of cast that broader net to try to bring back some folks that might have been parking here for not airport business. That's obviously the hope with those monthly permits. One of the other reasons that we've brought this proposed action is we do want to be prepared for when we do have additional parking demand from a second carrier. You know, we obviously don't have anyone just yet, but our conversations have been very productive. And I think we've kind of seen through the length of this conversation that if we were to try to do an increase, once parking demand is near capacity, if we do have an additional air service that's getting us closer to the lot being full, it's a very long process to get those rate increases through the commission, through the public notice, and then through the council approval. One thing I will note that our finance team has pointed out to me is our council does not need to do a 60-day notice to reduce rates. So if rates were approved here and we started to see a negative impact on parking because people thought they were too high, it's very easy for us to go back to the council and say, hey, we'd like to drop these back down to where they were compared to what it is to raise them. So I don't want to muddy the waters.
Was that it was a council member who left the meeting, correct?
Correct, that's Councilmember Matthews.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so I've heard her in the meetings, in like the actual council meetings too, but her comments are like apt. There was no appetite in this room to talk about not raising the rates until I brought it up. And it was, hey, we need to look at data before we do that. And like my worry is sure, there's no 60-day notice on lowering the rates, but yeah, why would we even put ourselves in that position if we're not up against the problem yet? Especially if it's already profitable.
Okay,
Like I want to see more people use the airport.
okay,
Can I put my 2 cents in real quick? I would like to make a proposal that we vote on 2 separate things, like one, the economy lot, and then 2, the terminal lot, I guess, that's closer. I'm all for raising the price on the terminal, and I'm for raising the prices on the longer term stays. One thing that I would like to see is the daily and the weekly rate for the economy stay lower. That way, if there is somebody that wants to fly at the airport and they are a local, they have an option for a lower cost.
Yeah, we could totally look at those separate. I wanted to leave it kind of open-ended. I do have, I think, one more slide here, Adam, but I think it was just a reminder to, discussion. And then there's really, I kind of wanted to leave this to the group, that if we wanted to take it as a package or take it separately, I'd just be happy to have everybody's feedback as the full commission, so that's some information we'll be able to share with council when these next steps occur. So however you guys see fit, if anybody wants to make a motion, I mean, obviously chair can.
okay, the first motion I'm gonna call for is there a motion to accept the rate increases as proposed today?
I move
This is Commissioner Hanovich. I move to accept the rate increases as proposed today.
And do I have a second?
Commissioner Steiner seconds it.
Okay, can we have a vote to see if we'll accept the rates as proposed today?
Could I ask for a point of clarification before the vote? Are we accepting the rates in green or the rates in green and red?
The rates in green were previously accepted by the commission
Yeah.
and previous discussion we had on this. So I think.
So we're just talking about the rates in red, just to clarify.
Yeah, so I'm gonna poll everybody so we get a good vote. I'm gonna vote yes, we accept them. Gail Jackson,
I believe Commissioner Jackson had to drop off.
okay,
Yes.
is Robert Carpenter on? Robbie Hanovich,
Concur.
Andrew,
I'm opposed.
David
I'll vote yes.
and Colby?
I'm also opposed.
If I count it was 3-2.
Correct.
Okay, so the motion to accept as published today passes 3-2. So we'll go ahead and forward that to the council. Okay. All right. And then did you have one more to?
I do have another one. This is a different fee that we have not talked about before, which is airport badging fees. So as a commercial service airport, Flagstaff Airport issues security access credentials to anyone who needs unescorted access to the airfield or unsecured areas or secured areas of the terminal, excuse me. You can broadly break those down into two categories of security badges. One is what we refer to as an AOA badge or an Air Operations Area badge. That's essentially for everything within the airfield, but excluding the areas that are for commercial passenger service. So the terminal and the area immediately adjacent to it where commercial aircraft boarding occurs. The second one is there's kind of two badges in there. One is a secure identification display area or SIDA badge, or a sterile area badge with some nuance between those. But essentially, both of those get you beyond the TSA checkpoints or into the area immediately around the commercial aircraft boarding area. We issue about 135 AOA badges and about 90 SIDA or sterile area badges annually. Currently, there are no limit to the number of badges that can be issued to any of our tenants. So whether that's the airline, they have an unlimited number per their staff, whether it's somebody who's renting a hangar from us, there's no limit on how many people they can have badge or sponsor to have a badge for their aircraft storage unit. And right now, Flagstaff, we don't charge anything for badges, and we're the only commercial service airport in the state of Arizona that does not. Okay. So here's a table showing our annual cost for providing those badges. So for staff time, supplies, postage, so that's part of the system that we send fingerprints off to the federal government for background checks for SIDA and sterile badges. Fingerprinting fees, which is the process we pay to have those fees run through the database and checked. And then there's an enrollment system that we enroll every badge holder into, where the federal government alerts us if certain criminal charges that would preclude somebody from having a badge has. So our total costs for badge and we have broken it down versus initial for renewal. Some of those costs are one time and some of those staff times are a little bit shorter for renewals. So for AOA badges, our costs are about $86 for an initial, $33 for a renewal. For the SIDA and sterile, it's about $177 for an initial and $125 for each renewal. And lost badges end up costing us about $74. Down at the bottom, I did include a cost excluding labor, so we didn't include staff time in those. So excluding labor just for materials costs, it is a bit less, quite a bit less. $16 is typical, with $72 for the initial for the SIDA or sterile. Our annual expenses related to badging run about $20,000 a year for the airport. So similar to the parking rates, we did
That's a good question.
Sure.
Again, what is the AOA? I missed that.
Sure, AOA is Air Operations Area. So that's essentially anybody who needs access to airfield, but not part of the commercial service aspect. So not the TSA side of the terminal or not around the commercial aircraft. So that would be anybody that rents a hangar from us. A lot of our contractors that are doing work on the runways, for example, might only need an AOA badge because they're on the airfield, but not, adjacent to the commercial aircraft boarding areas. So we did do a comparison of a number of different airports. For this study, we looked at Grand Canyon, Phoenix Mesa Gateway, Yuma International, Durango, La Plata County, St. George Regional, Montrose Regional, Prescott Regional, Laughlin Bullhead, Tucson International, and Phoenix Sky Harbor. For AOA badges, the lowest is Yuma at $10. They're $10 across the board. They just charge a flat application fee. Highest for AOA badges is $100 per badge, and that's actually at Prescott. For the SIDA or sterile badges, the lowest is again Yuma with that $10 flat fee. Highest is $210, and I believe that's Durango. If you add up all their fees in there, Durango, La Plata County, and actually Prescott is also might be the highest for that one as well. For lost badge fees, the lowest is $30 and the highest is $200. And some of those vary by number of occurrence, like how many times you've lost your badge. A lot of them escalate their costs as a number of losses go through there as part of an incentive for people to hold on to them. There's a little bit of a double-edged sword because if you charge too much, people might not tell you when they lose their badge, which is also not good from a security standpoint. We'll talk a little bit more about that when I show some of our proposed fees here on the next slide. So we have made a proposed fee here. I know this is the first time everybody's seeing this, so we'll obviously have an opportunity for some discussion. Our proposal would be to have separate fees for an initial credential versus a renewal. As we showed on the earlier table, the costs of the airport are significantly higher on the initial issuing of a badge than the renewals. Our attempt would be to recover all of the material costs and a portion of the labor costs. Obviously, we're not trying to charge the full amount of what those are, at least on this initial proposal is. Our total costs, including labor, are considerably higher than our proposed badge fees here. And then our hope would be to build in a rate increase in about a 2-year time period, just as costs continue to increase. So what we propose here initially is for an initial AOA badge would be $40 and starting later this year in 2025, with a renewal being half that at $20. With the SIDA or sterile initial being $75, with a renewal being $50. With a lost badge fee of $50 for the first occurrence, $75 for the second occurrence, and $100 for the third occurrence. With a roughly 20 to 25% increase between now and 2027 for a $50 initial AOA badge fee, a $25 renewal, $100 sterile area badge fee, and a $75 renewal, and then $75, $100, and $125 for the lost badges.
Does Wiseman, do they have AOA or SIDA in their guys?
Wiseman has SIDA because they generally perform fueling and maintenance activities on the commercial aircraft.
Okay. Excuse me, Brian, we have a hand raised by Commissioner Hanovich as well as Commissioner Colby.
Commissioner Hanovich, you want to start us off?
Yep. Hey, thank you. I appreciate the research you guys have done on this to try to compare and contrast across the region. Curious, is there a carve out for contractors? The concern would be if you charge the contractor, they would just pass that cost on to the airport anyway. So just something to think about. I didn't see that carve out listed.
That's a good point. There are some airports that do that. We did not propose that, but I'm certainly open to that discussion. So, yeah, I actually, I like the idea. I think for simplicity, I didn't include it this time around, but as you say, that does make sense to me as well. So if we get to a vote today, if anybody wanted to propose that, I'd certainly be open to that recommendation.
So just for clarity, as a follow-up, in the previous slide, contractors were called out separately. In this case, contractors are not called out. So a contractor would still have an initial rate of $40. Just want to make sure I'm understanding.
Correct. And potentially, that would depend on what type of contractor. So we do have a number of contractors that do work in the terminal that end up going into the TSA side of the checkpoint. Adam mentioned, I think a meeting or two ago, what happened around Christmas when our TSA access gate broke and we had to build that temporary wall. So we did have we have a number of on-call contractors out here at the airport, and some of them do have SIDA badges. So it could have been that under this proposal, without a carve out, they would be paying those higher badge fees.
Great, thank you.
And I think Commissioner White maybe was next.
Yes.
Yeah, my question is, I know that if they lose a badge, they have to pay a higher fee. How long does a badge last? Does it get replaced every year, or is that they just have it until it's gone? Great
point. So badges typically last 2 years. Initial badges for the SIDA area are less than that. Is it 1 year, Adam? I think it's 1 year for the initial for SIDA, and some of that has to do with some of the background check requirements for that badge and some of the training. There's some training courses that SIDA badge holders have to go through as well. So it's a 1 year initial for SIDA badges and then 2 years thereafter. Everybody else is a 2 year badge process. Now, one of the things that, one of the other reasons we want to discourage people from losing their badge is the TSA allows us to have a certain amount of active badges that are unaccounted for. Once we exceed that, we have to cancel that entire series of badges and replace it for everybody in the airport. So if you have one of our current AOA badges and a certain number of people lose them, so there's a certain number of active badges that are lost, we have to essentially redesign what our badges look like graphically, shut off everyone's badge and replace the whole facilities.
Yeah,
So-
within 2 years, it's fair to say you shouldn't lose your card 3 times within a 2-year period. So if it was like a 10-year period, I was gonna have other comments, but that's answers my question. Thank you.
Sure. No, great question. Sorry, I missed that before.
I have a question then. The background check seems pretty pricey. I mean, is that a fairly new requirement, or has this been with the TSA
It's been
for years?
for years. Yeah, I don't know I know the rates change sometimes. That's what it currently is, but that process has been the same for as far back as I can recall.
Yeah.
Who absorbs that cost?
Right now we do.
Okay.
And-
meaning the airport fund, I should say.
The airport does. TSA, they have their costs. Does it go through TSA to get, or do they contract it out, you know?
It goes, so we send it to an entity within the TSA that does this work. So not within like the TSA here at Flagstaff, it's through a broader nationwide TSA organization.
Department of Homeland Security.
Department of Homeland Security. Yeah.
So are they increasing prices, or do you find that, you know, things are pretty stable with that?
I believe there is a price increase this year. I think this includes the latest one. It either just happened or is just about to happen. So yes, they do sometimes increase their prices as well.
Is there, going back to Commissioner Hanovich's question on the contractors, is there a temporary or a, 3-month badge or something that, or is it easier just to give them the year badge and?
So with our contractors, one of the things that we try to do as an airport is reduce the number of badges in circulation to reduce the chances that somebody's going to lose one, right? So essentially with our contractors, it's often tied to their contract term. So if they're working under a contract that says, hey, you got 90 days to finish this job, we only make that badge good for the time they're here.
Okay.
If they're one of our on-call contractors that might be out here for a longer period, say they have a 3 or 4, 5-year on-call contract, we'll often issue the badge for the full 2-year duration, but we'll take it back from them when they're not using it, and we'll put it in secure storage and only give it to them when they have another task out here. So they're not just hanging in a worker's pickup truck or something. We're making sure that we get them back and hold on to them. But we do sometimes issue them for shorter periods if the contract duration is
Okay.
shorter than the badge expiration would be.
Okay. You got any more?
As I mentioned, I'm open to suggestions on this. We're open to a vote if people are in favor or opposed to it. I would ask if we do make any amendments, for example, waiving the fee for contractors, that we clarify that that's contractors that are working for the airport. Because we do have a number of contractors out here that maybe work, like, I think you could consider certain staff that work for the airline a contractor, and I'm not sure we would want to exempt them. So I guess if we are going to exempt contractors, I'd maybe like the vote to be clear on who that includes.
Hey, Robbie, can I go back to you and can you answer Brian's comment there? How you saw it?
Yeah, so my concern in trying to think about a carve out for contractors is really if that cost becomes passed through back to the airport. So from that perspective, I would think that, or I would offer to consider carve outs for contractors that are operating contracts that are directly supporting the airport. Not contractors that are hired by, say, the airlines that are coming in, or maybe if Wiseman has a contractor that they hire, right? I don't think that would be applicable because that cost would not be passed on back to the airport. Does that help clarify sort of what I'm thinking about?
It does. Yeah, and I think I understand where you're going. I guess whenever we phrase the if anybody makes a motion, I guess I just want to make sure that it's phrased in a way that reflects what you guys are talking about there.
Okay,
What I would ask maybe to consider, Commissioner Waddell, is, I don't think I have a good handle on all of the nuances that might apply in terms of contractors. Maybe some of the experts in the room could kind of put some brain power toward it with a proposal on what the carve out would look like. So that way we don't overlook someone just because of a lack of understanding of all the airport operations.
Could we say that, could we say something to the effect of contractors that are being, I don't know, employed's not the right word. But I would think
Commissioned by the city.
commissioned by the city or being paid by the city? Because that's kind of what you're talking about, is those pass-through costs.
Yeah,
Maybe contractors actively under contract.
My only concern with that is we do have some, like, we have a form of contract with Wiseman sometimes. Like, I don't know if they would consider a lease a contract, probably not. I guess I would want to make sure that it's clear that it's not businesses that are operating out here that aren't being paid by the airport.
can we,
I think I understand what you guys are saying.
can you do some research on that and come back with maybe a suggestion?
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you mind
Well,
showing the
could
cost
we-
slides one more time? I was just curious what this was costing the airport.
You bet.
Yeah, it makes sense to me that Prescott would be expensive with Embry Riddle right there. It's a good way to make money.
That's a fair point.
Um,
And the total cost, including staff time, are that second to the last line on the.
and
on
so
the-
is this out of pocket, like not considering what we don't take, we don't take in anything for it currently, or I don't remember if I paid for my badge or not.
We don't pay, we don't take anything for it right now. It's all just out of the airport fund.
Gotcha. Then yeah, I would motion to vote on the badges for a fee.
So we have a motion to accept this with the caveat about the contractors?
I got a question. So why do you have excluding labor costs? Were you thinking of eating the labor costs?
I thought that was something that might come up today, was, I also kind of wanted to show just sort of a breakdown of how much of that was material versus staff time. So when we went to the
Mhm.
next slide, I think I talked about, we didn't try to hit, you notice our totals. None of our proposed rates hit the full amount of the,
Burden cost.
of the
Oh, okay.
total costs. So I was kind of trying to show that we were
Yeah,
trying
it's still
to,
gonna be subsidized.
right.
what
I guess I'm
I'm
trying to say that we
seeing.
weren't trying to cover 100% of the costs, but somewhere between the material costs and the labor was what we
Okay.
tried to set those.
Trying to put
Um,
it somewhere in the middle.
yeah. Obviously, I'm open to suggestions on that too, but I know that as something we
Well,
haven't charged before, we didn't want to jump to
do you
extreme.
know what would the number, how much, like, based on how many badges we have now, what's the revenue this would bring in?
Oh,
We're still subsidizing it.
we would probably be, I'd have to do the math real quick, but I think this would be bringing in roughly 65 to 75% of the costs, cost recovery.
I feel better about it like a 50-50, but I mean, honestly, at 75, given it is a cost, it costs the airport something. And yeah, I mean, outside of a contractor who has to come to the airport to work, there's other options for people to go to for airports, as you showed with the other slides.
And then
So like as a pilot, like, and getting that badge from you guys, that it is free, I think that's awesome, but like, I think it is a worthwhile thing to pay for to help avoid increasing costs in other places, especially.
Thank you.
I agree with
Yeah.
that.
So we have a motion to accept the rates as shown. But we also have a concern about the contractor fees. So do we want to wait until we have a firm handle on how the contractors will be?
Sheriff, if I can make
Go ahead.
I thought of something that might cover that, so maybe tell me if what if we said, contractors that were performing work, that was being reimbursed by the city? Essentially, if the concern is a pass-through fee, if we're reimbursing them, or would that be a way to
I would just say any contractors under contract. Well, no, because then that takes in everybody else, doesn't it?
potentially.
I don't know, anybody out there have a,
Commissioner Schaus, I think you're
I'll,
muted.
I was gonna say, I'll withdraw my motion for the time being if you wanna do the research on the wording for that. The other thing, the only other part that I was thinking about that it might be worth looking to is, do you know how many of the badges are for, say, um, a hangar shade port rental versus some other reason? Or like it's just like a secondary for that tenant or something like that,
I don't believe that we have our system. I don't think our system tracks it in a way that would tell
is
us
able
that.
to differentiate that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I also don't, one of the other reasons I recall now I didn't share the total cost is because right now it's very difficult for us to track how many were an initial renewal
mhm.
or initial versus a renewal. So for the total fees per year, I'm sure we could do it, but it's gonna take a lot of staff
It's
time
a
to go.
roll, yeah, it's a rolling, well, and it's a rolling thing, I get it.
Yeah.
Um,
what,
my only thought as well was in the people who are, like, we're talking about the contractors, they have to come there for the work. We don't want the company just billing the airport for the badge costs, right?
Correct.
So essentially, like, there's those, but like other, I don't know. I don't know how to put my words together on this. I'm sorry. I'm not opposed to fees. I'm just trying to think about what the smart way would be to do it. So
okay,
I think maybe I'll table my motion for the time being, and if we want to continue this conversation, definitely, yeah.
what I'd like to suggest is that we go ahead and table it. Give the staff, time to kind of think through this. I think we got some smart people here that can do that. But I'd also like to see the staff present this again in July so we can get this. Does this have to be approved by the council?
It does. As a new fee, yes, it would also have to be
Okay.
approved by council.
So it's gonna be, if you wanted to do an 8-1, it'd be hard to do if we didn't approve it
It
today.
would, and that's fine. I mean, the dates were, this was actually, we just copied these slides over from last month. So I probably would have bumped that back a little bit too, since we missed the
Okay.
commission meeting.
Okay.
And we will have a meeting in June, correct?
Well, that's another topic for the next.
Oh, yeah, Jim.
But I would say is because of the 60-day notice that's required for fees, we could actually take this, there's 2 reads that have to happen to council. So in theory, if we hadn't had a chance to discuss it in the commission meeting, I could present it to council, say we were pending a vote from the commission for the first read, and then if we had it before the second read came back, we would have a chance to provide your feedback at that time. So I guess I'm saying we have some flexibility with how, I don't want to put anybody in a position of voting on something today with unclear language. We'll figure it out.
Okay, but I don't want to push you guys too hard, but I'd like to get this settled so, you're not losing money for the next 3 months because we're delaying the
Understandable.
decision.
We are running into where council goes on recess for a portion of the summer, so this will probably be after their recess, so this would come to
Okay.
them anyway, so it'd really be, at this point.
Well, so quick question.
Hmm?
Would this, for people who already have badges, would they just pay the renewal then? Is that what you were saying before? Just wanted to make sure.
That'd be our intent, is that this would only be
Yeah.
for badges issued after the deadline, whether it's a
Moving
new
forward.
one or a renewal. And if it was a renewal, we've kind of already eaten those costs. So for example, someone who's been attending out here for a long time and has a badge, they would be paying the renewal rate, not the initial rate.
Totally understand. Thank you.
And Commissioner White has some suggested text in the chat that you may want to consider for the next meeting.
Well, thank you, Commissioner White. I see that in there. We will, I'll take that to our finance team. They're the ones who are really good at crafting this type of language, so I'll get with them before we bring this back to you.
Okay, any further discussion?
I did want to bring up next month's meeting. So I mentioned the Air Service Development Conference. That is over the period when we would normally be having our commission meeting. So myself, Claire Harper will be there, as will Councilmember Matthews. I think we can pick a different day if we want to still have one in June. But due to staff being out, I don't think we could do it the normal week. So I guess my question to this team would be, do we want to skip the June meeting because we're not gonna have staff availability, or do we want to try to reschedule that?
I personally can do it any other week, or rather, yeah, any other week within that month, so the rescheduling would be fine by me. I'd
Does
love to
anybody-
hear about the air service thing, you know, as quickly after that happens.
Sure, understood.
So. Does anybody have any objections to not having the meeting next week or next month due to the staff being not available? Plus putting, and then having them give us a full briefing in the July meeting?
This is Commissioner Schaus. I'd prefer us to just reschedule, but I'm probably the only one. I'm just really curious about how that air service conference is gonna go.
Yeah. Anybody else have any objections to just canceling next month? Okay,
I guess that's an important note. Commissioner Steiner will no longer be on the commission next month, so it might be trickier for us to get a quorum.
true.
With-
Yeah, so can I get a motion that we cancel the meeting next month due to staffing and possible lack of quorum?
This is Commissioner Schaus. I'll make a motion to cancel the meeting next month.
And second,
I second it, Commissioner Steiner.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, so we'll just go ahead and move to the July meeting. Okay. Anything else? Okay, next thing, anything else from any of the commissioners?
No, I do want to say thank you though for answering all those questions and being patient. Really
Best
appreciate
of
it.
luck to, oh, sorry, Commissioner Shaw, I thought you were finished. I didn't mean to step on you. Best of luck to you, Commissioner Snyder.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. And I'd just like to say, yeah, I enjoyed being on the commission, and it's time for me to move on. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay. So can I have a motion to adjourn?
Commissioner Hanovich, I'll motion to adjourn.
Second?
This is Commissioner White. I
Commissioner
second.
Schaus, I'll second.
Okay. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, the meeting is adjourned at 14:43.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate your time today.
Bye all.
Yeah, thank you all and thank for the hard work you do. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Might be our record long.
Yeah,
meeting.
that's a long one. There's
Can I
my.
get a